Welcome to Module 3. In this module, we're going to discuss the change in organization and productivity of work that led to major income and standard of living changes in the West that's known as the Industrial Revolution. We've been building up to this moment in the previous two modules, so I'm really excited to talk about this with you. We're going to begin in this video by simply defining what we mean by an industrial revolution. Then we're going to proceed in future videos with discussing why it happened, where it happened, and what it really looked like on the ground. We'll spend some time talking about some fun gadgets that represented actually major important technological improvements, and also spend considerable time discussing changes in organization. Together, this all really makes up what we mean by an industrial revolution. So first, let's just talk about definitions. When we say the Industrial Revolution, what we mean is a transition from a primarily agricultural handicraft economy to one that is primarily industrial and based on manufacturing. And with those changes, we will see an accompanying increase in output and productivity. In Britain, we pin this revolution as occurring roughly between about 1750 and 1820. You'll also commonly hear this referred to as the first industrial revolution. I think I've already used that term casually somewhere in these videos. There was a subsequent second industrial revolution, which we'll also discuss towards the end of the class, which happened between roughly 1860 and the beginning of the First World War in 1914. These gains in productivity and output were achieved through essentially two main channels. One is the adoption of important new inventions that were labor-saving, but they consumed energy, particularly coal. For example, one of the important innovations in this period was the use of steam engines to power looms used to weave cotton. So that's a canonical example. But there were also important changes in the organization of labor, in the implementation of the large factory that's also responsible for some of those major gains in output and productivity. An important debate that we'll consider, especially when we examine the numbers behind all of this, is whether we can really call these changes a revolution. You know, it's called the Industrial Revolution, but when we think of a revolution, we usually think of something that describes a massive change. And okay, well sure, if we think about broadly the fact that in 1750, there were no factories in Britain, but by 1820, Britain produced more than half of the world's industrial output. That kind of sounds like a massive change. Now, on the other hand, historians used to really think of this as a very sharp change, like a literal sudden overnight revolution. What we kind of know now a little bit better is that it was more of a gradual change. The very first factories anywhere, and especially in Britain, were very small. And this important invention of the steam engine, it existed as early as the 17th century, but not used very much. So in the next set of slides, I'm going to be discussing some of the changes in a numerical context, and we'll get to think about whether this was really a sharp change or more of a gradual change that accumulated over.